The story begins with darkness, the kind of darkness that lives under mountains and does not know the difference between yesterday and 100 years ago. It is the darkness you don't just see, but feel pressing against your skin, the kind that swallows light beams like they were never there. For most people, that darkness exists only as an abstract fear. For miners, it's a workplace. It's Tuesday. Our camera drops slowly through black rock, layer by layer, through the bones of the earth. We pass seams of coal, veins of copper glinting like frozen lightning, pockets of quartz that catch the lights of our imaginary descent. Faint echoes drift up from below, metal on stone, the grunt of men working, the distant growl of machinery, all wrapped in a muffled echo that makes it sound like we're listening from underwater. The mine we are traveling into sits in the highlands of a country that could be Chile, or Peru, or Bolivia. It could be Pennsylvania in the early 20th century, or Wales in the 19th. It doesn't really matter. Around the world, the architecture of underground work is strangely similar. Shafts and ramps, drifts and galleries, timber supports like ribs, rails and carts, and electrical cables strung like veins. And everywhere, the same thin line between a normal day and a tragedy that ends up in the newspaper. In this particular story, we'll call it the Santa Lucia mine, a copper and gold operation cut into the side of a barren mountain hours from the nearest city, a place where the wind above ground never really stops and the dust never quite settles. On the surface, there are corrugated metal buildings with peeling paint, piles of broken rock, a row of hard hats hanging like helmets in an armory, and a small shrine at the edge of the parking area. A candle, faded plastic flowers, a statue of Santa Barbara, patron saint of miners. Our narrator speaks over slow, wide shots of the site. The bus arriving before dawn. Men in work boots and heavy jackets stepping off, their breath white in the cold air, their faces still half asleep. A supervisor ticking names on a clipboard. A few jokes in the early morning chill, the kind of gallows humor people in dangerous jobs use to keep the fear at arm's length. On the second bus from the city, sitting by the window with his lunchbox on his knees, is a man in his late 30s named Mateo Rojas. He's been working in mines since he was barely 18. He has the look a lot of miners share. Compact strength, a face weathered beyond his years, eyes that always seem to be measuring distances and angles, the way rock sits, the way a ceiling looks just before it decides to come down. Mateo is quiet by habit, but not unfriendly. People trust him. They say he has good ears underground. He can hear the mountain talking, cracks, groans, the subtle shift in the timber of the rock long before a piece falls. In another life, he might have been a musician. In this one, those skills keep him and his crew alive. On this morning, as the bus climbs the switchbacks towards the mine, he stares out at the mountain that has taken so much from this town and given back just enough to keep people coming. The camera lingers on his profile, the scar on his jaw from some long-ago accident, the way his fingers tap unconsciously on the lunchbox in a rhythm only he understands. We cut to him in the locker room, pulling on his coveralls, lacing his boots, fastening the chin strap of his battered helmet. Around him, men talk about football scores, about their kids, about the price of fuel. Someone mentions the small tremor they felt last night, barely enough to rattle the glasses in their kitchen, but enough to remind everyone where they live. Another man jokes, "The mountain's stretching her back." The laughter is a little too loud. On the way to the cage, the elevator that will drop them hundreds of meters into the earth, Mateo pauses for a second at the little shrine by the entrance. It's small, half hidden from view, but he always sees it. There's a candle burned down to a stub, the wax spilled like white tears over the rough stones. He touches his fingers lightly to the statue's base, not quite across on his chest, but close enough. "Watch over us," he murmurs, so quietly that the words barely move his lips. The cage ride is a ritual in itself. A tight cluster of men in hard hats and headlamps, the smell of sweat and dust and oil hanging in the enclosed space. The gate clangs shut. Someone slaps the metal, 3 quick knocks, and whoever's working the controls up top responds in kind. Then they descend, the light from the surface shrinking to a coin, and then nothing. replaced by the harsh beams of their helmet lamps and the faint glow of the cage's internal bulb. Voices echo strangely inside the shaft. Jokes, curses, little snatches of song. The men pretend it's just another commuting trip, but beneath the banter is an old understanding that if anything happens down here, help is not minutes away. It can be hours, or never. At the 500-meter level, the cage grinds to a halt with a shudder. The doors slide open onto a rough tunnel lit with fluorescent tubes that flicker just enough to unsettle you if you stare at them too long. The air is warmer here, damp, carrying the metallic tang of rock dust and the faint smell of explosives long since detonated. There is always a hint of something else too, a mineral, or maybe just the breath of the mountain itself. Mateo and his crew step out. Today they're assigned to a drift, that is, a horizontal tunnel being driven deeper into the rock, following a vein the geologists tell them is promising. On the map, it's a neat line, a simple extension, nothing overly complicated. On the ground, it's a bit more sinister. The drift runs straight for a while, then begins to curve into older workings, places cut decades ago in a different era of regulations and safety standards, when the mine was still a small operation. Those old tunnels are mostly sealed now. Reinforced walls of concrete block, welded steel doors, signs warning authorized personnel only. Places where the maps are smudged, where no one wants to go unless they have to. But the rock doesn't care about our lines. Veins run where they want. And in this case, the richest ore seems to lie right up against one of those old, disused sections. The foreman, a solid man named Vargas with a graying beard and a voice like coarse gravel, gives them the plan. "We're going to work up to the old level 7 access," he says, pointing with a thick finger at the map pinned to a timber post. "But we don't open anything. That door stays closed. That wall stays up. If you see old timber, old air pipes, you stop and you call me. Understood?" They all nod. Everyone knows the stories about level 7. They're the kind of stories that grow like fungus in any mine. Dark, damp, feeding on fear. Older miners talk about a cave-in there in the 1960s, about bodies they never could get out. Some say it's exaggerated. Some say the company buried more than just rock that day. Almost no one, even the engineers, likes to linger near the sealed access. As they move deeper into the drift, the documentary narration pulls back a bit, giving us context. Around the world, miners have long believed they're not alone underground. In Cornish tin mines, men spoke of knockers, or Tommyknockers, little spirits that hammered in the walls to either warn of danger or mock the living. In Germany, they had the Berggeister, mountain spirits. In the Appalachians, there were tales of ghostly knocks heard before a roof fall, as if the dead were pounding on the rock to tell their brothers, "Get out." It's easy to dismiss such stories from the safety of daylight. But when you are half a kilometer below the surface, surrounded by tons of rock, held up by bolts and timber and habit, every unexplained noise has a weight. Is that crack of stone just the mountain settling, a normal process? Or is it the prelude to disaster? Over time, the human brain begins to personalize those noises. They become voices, warnings, sometimes accusations. Back in the drift, hours pass in the rhythm of work. Drills bite into rock, hoses hiss, carts rattle. Men shout to be heard over the noise. Dust hangs in the air, caught in the beams of their headlamps like a constantly falling snowstorm. They drill, load, blast, ventilate, move forward by meters that feel like inches. It is only late in the shift, when the heavy work pauses and the machines are off for a cycle, that the strangeness begins. The first time it is so faint that only one man hears it clearly. They are sitting on overturned buckets, sharing a quick meal in the still warm drift. The air is quiet except for the distant hum of a ventilation fan, the occasional drip of water from the rock, and the low murmur of conversation. Someone tells a joke about a new guy confusing blasting caps with fuses. The laughter is tired but genuine. Then, as it dies down, another sound threads into the silence. Knock. A pause. Knock, knock. It is subtle, almost lost in the background, but it is distinct. Not the sharp crack of rock fracturing, not the squeak of steel support shifting. It sounds like knuckles, or perhaps a hammer tapping on stone. Mateo hears it and feels a prickle run up the back of his neck. "Did you hear that?" he asks, quiet. "Rock," says one of the younger men immediately, almost too quickly, as if by naming it he can make it mundane. "Just the wall settling." But Mateo's ears are tuned differently. He has listened to this tunnel all day. He knows the language of its strain. This is something else. Vargas, passing by on his inspection, hears it too. He slows, head tilting. The light from his helmet paints sharp lines on the damp wall. Knock. Longer pause. Knock, knock. This time, more of them hear it. Conversations falter. Forks hang halfway to mouths. Even the ever-present drips seem to pause as if listening. "Where is that coming from?" someone mutters. They all turn toward the deeper end of the drift, where the mine, until it was cleared. He was the only one who didn't get trapped, Julio says. The only one. Another man scoffs, claiming it's all just rock movement and imagination. But he, too, will find himself listening a little too closely to the silence when the lights go off and the bunks creak. The knocking doesn't stop. Over the next week, every time Mateo's crew works that drift, there is a moment, or several, when the noises begin again. Sometimes it's faint, a pattern just at the edge of hearing. Sometimes it's clear enough that no one can pretend it's nothing. Knock. Knock. Pause. Knock, 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 knock. The pattern is not constant. It doesn't come on command. It seems to choose its moments. Often, it starts when the heavy machines are off and the men are quiet, when their minds have just enough space to notice the small things. On the third day, one of the younger miners, a wiry man named Luis, loses his composure. The sound comes again from the direction of the sealed level 7 access, and this time it's louder, like someone is pounding on the other side of a thick door. Knock, knock, knock. Luis stands up, face pale under the dust. "Who's there?" he shouts toward the wall, half angry, half afraid. His voice echoes weirdly down the tunnel. "If this is some bastard playing a joke, cut it out!" The drift swallows his words. The only reply is another set of knocks, closer in rhythm now, almost like an answer. Knock. Knock. The men look at one another. There is a very old kind of silence, a stunned, animal quiet that falls over people when they realize the world is not behaving as expected. Afterward, back on the surface, Vargas writes it up in the most boring way he can. Unexplained rock noise near sealed level 7 access. Possible ground movement, no immediate hazard observed. He recommends a geotechnical inspection. The engineers come down with their instruments, strain gauges, geophones, little handheld seismographs. They listen to the rock with their own tools. They tap with hammers, watch digital traces jump and fall on their screens. They mutter about stress redistribution, about old voids shifting, about water in the rock. "Yes, there is movement here," one of them says, pointing at a cluster of lines on his gadget. "The old workings are settling. It's expected. This is why we sealed it. The knocking you hear is just the mountain doing what the mountain does." It's a comfort for about a day. Then the noises change. The first time it happens, it's just Mateo and one other Nan finishing up some support work while the rest of the crew has gone ahead to catch the cage. The drift is almost empty. Their headlamps throw long shadows on the uneven floor. As they tighten a new set of bolts, the sound comes again. Knock, knock, knock. It's firmer now, more defined, and distinctly from behind the concrete wall. "Another rock settling?" the other man says, trying for humor and failing. Mateo hesitates. On impulse, he lifts his wrench and raps it 3 times on the metal of a nearby support. Knock, knock, knock. He refuses to expect anything. But from behind the wall, after a heartbeat's pause, comes the reply. Knock, knock, knock. The exact same rhythm.
The two men stare at one another. There is no echo in that pattern. The acoustics are wrong. This is not the sound reflecting. This is something responding. "Don't do that again," the other man whispers. Mateo doesn't. When he tells Vargas about it, the foreman's face hardens. "We're not doing this," he says. "We're not telling ghost stories like kids. There's enough to worry about down here without inventing more." "But it answered," Mateo insists quietly, like a signal. There is a word that passes silently between them, unspoken but understood. Tommyknockers. Later that week, in the mess hall, the older miners begin to share deeper stories, the ones they usually keep for last nights and too much drinking. Stories of hearing picks in walls where no one is working, footsteps on gravel when you're alone, murmuring voices in disused drifts that go silent the moment you swing your lamp around. Some say the knockers are warning spirits, the ghosts of dead miners trying to tell you to get out before the collapse. Others say they're malicious, jealous of the living, pounding away just to drive you mad. They're tales of men who followed the knocking and found rich ore, and others of men who followed it and never came back. The documentary-style narration reminds us that in many mining cultures, leaving a small offering for the spirits was common practice. A piece of bread, a splash of beer, a coin tucked into a crack in the wall. In some places, miners would whistle or tap a friendly rhythm before starting work, as if greeting unseen coworkers. At Santa Lucia, that tradition had faded. Safety posters, not superstition, lined the walls of the break room. But now, under the weight of that unexplained knocking, old habits begin to creep back. Someone leaves a cigarette butt on a rock ledge. Someone else mutters a half prayer, half salute toward level 7 as they pass. The turning point comes with the tremor. It happens 2 weeks after the first knocks. Sound alone is one thing, earth moving is another. On that day, the shift is split. One crew is deeper inside the mine, another, including Mateo's group, is working near the contentious drift. It's late morning. The men are tired but focused, drilling holes for the next round of explosives. The air tastes of rock dust and sweat. Without warning, the mountain shudders. It's subtle at first, like a huge animal twitching in its sleep. Dust sifts from the ceiling, the bolts creak. Then there is a deep, gut-level grinding sound, a bass note you feel more than you hear. Lights flicker. Some of the men grab the nearest support, instinctively bracing themselves. "Hold," Vargas yells. "Nobody run." Running in a tunnel during a tremor is a good way to break your neck. Panic kills as efficiently as rock. The shaking lasts only a few seconds, but it stretches in the minds of the men like an elastic band on the verge of snapping. 2, 3, 4 heartbeats where everything might come down, then it's over. The dust hangs in the beams of their lamps like fog. "Everyone okay?" Vargas calls, counting helmets. "Report!" They check each other, hands running over arms and shoulders, eyes scanning for blood. No one is hurt. No rock has fallen beyond a few small shards that clattered harmlessly to the floor. Relief floods the drift. Nervous laughter bubbles up. Someone swears they didn't even flinch. Another admits his knees went weak. That's the thing about near misses underground. Survival feels like both a blessing and a dare. Then, just as their breathing begins to slow, the knocking starts again. This time, it is not faint. From behind the sealed level 7 wall, from inside rock that should be empty of anything living, comes a rapid series of hammering blows. Knock, 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 knock. It's frantic, urgent, like someone trapped and desperate. Every head turns. The sound is so loud it seems to vibrate in their teeth. It's not distorted like rock fracturing. It is too clean, too regular. "Someone's down there," Luis whispers, face gone white. "That's impossible," Vargas says automatically. "Those levels have been sealed for decades. There's no—" The knocking interrupts him. Knock. 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 Then, astonishingly, knock, 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 knock. A different rhythm, almost like it's trying to speak. Something in Mateo's memory sparks. Years ago, an old-timer had shown him a simple way to send messages by knocking, a rough miner's Morse. 3 knocks for yes, 2 for no. Complex meanings built from simple patterns. It wasn't official, it was something men invented in tight places where voices didn't carry well. He steps forward, ignoring Vargas's hand on his shoulder. He approaches the concrete wall. Up close, he can see fine cracks from the tremor, hairline fractures radiating from old drill marks. The yellow warning paint is faded, almost ghostly.
He raises his own hand and knocks, slowly, deliberately, 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Then he waits, every cell in his body straining toward the silence. It answers. Knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks. Yes. Mateo's stomach drops. He swallows and knocks twice. Knock, knock. No. Then 3 again. Is someone alive in there? He asks, barely able to push the words past his throat. He knows it makes no sense. He also knows deep down that sense has left the tunnel some time ago. There's a pause. For a horrible second, he imagines the answer will be nothing, that he has just put his belief on the line and the universe will leave him hanging. Then the answering pattern comes, faintly muffled by the thickness of the wall. Knock. 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 Yes. Coat, a man in work clothes, a blurred human shape, sometimes standing, sometimes sitting on the guardrail, never walking, never flagging, never leaving the shoulder. You drive enough miles, Hank says. You understand that the road is made of more than asphalt and paint. It's made of all the things that have happened on it. Every skid mark, every pile of shattered glass, every bouquet of flowers tied to a signpost. Some places, they hold on to what happened. They don't let it go easy. And some folks, I think, don't know they're supposed to move on. Who is it supposed to be? Eli asks. What do people say? Depends on who you ask, Hank shrugs. Some say it's the driver who caused the crash, forced to stand there and watch the road forever. Some say it's the person who died waiting for help. Some say it's not anyone at all. Just the shape of all those stories piled together. The documentary voice slides back in, weaving Hank's words into a larger tapestry. In folklore studies, it tells us, there's something called the roadside revenant, spirits tied to places of sudden death, often encountered at the margins of travel, crossroads, bridgeheads, lonely stretches of highway. Modern trucker tales are just the latest iteration of an old motif, the vanishing hitchhiker, the lady in white, the man who appears in the middle of the lane and forces you to swerve, only to be gone when you look back. But there is something uniquely unsettling about a figure that doesn't move, doesn't ask anything, doesn't even step forward. It simply exists there, forcing you to wonder, if you did stop, what would happen? Would they approach? Would they get in? Would they speak? Or would they remain rooted to that spot, as if your presence, your truck, your questions are as irrelevant to them as insects to a monument? That question, the what if,
is the hook that catches the story and drags us toward its quieter, darker heart. One autumn night, rain washing the world into streaks and reflections, Eli finds himself back on that same stretch of highway, the one where he saw the figure the first time. The wipers thud back and forth, smearing water, keeping just ahead of the open faucet of the sky. The road is nearly empty. Most sane people are in bed. He is on a tight schedule, running behind because of a delay at the dock, trying to make up time while still staying within the law, juggling fatigue and caution and the arithmetic of hours. The radio is off. He wants the sound of the rain, the feel of his own thoughts. He has almost forgotten what mile marker it was. Almost. But as the numbers tick past 177, 178, 179, some muscle memory in his chest tightens. He finds himself checking the shoulder more than he needs to. The headlights carve through curtains of rain, highlighting the wet sheen of asphalt, the pale blur of the white line, the churn of water in the ditches. Everything looks like a ghost tonight. Every tree, every sign. Then he sees a shape ahead. It is exactly where he half expected it and fully hoped it wouldn't be, standing in the rain, unprotected, unbothered, at the edge of the road. This time, there is no mistaking it for a signpost. It is unmistakably human in form. The long coat, or dress or shroud hangs heavy and dark, but the rain doesn't seem to move it. The figure doesn't shiver or hunch against the cold. It stands, head slightly bowed, hands at its sides. His lights catch it, flare across it, and for the first time, he has the strangest sensation that it is not just any figure. It feels familiar. His hands move on the wheel of their own accord, loosening, hesitating. The truck drifts a fraction of an inch toward the shoulder, still safely in the lane but less rigid than it should be. Something in him, some small rebellious part that is tired of outrunning fear, thinks, I could pull over. I could stop. I could just see. The rest of him screams against it. The stories about drivers who did stop rarely end well. They're told in lowered voices, or not told at all. No one can ever agree on exact details, but the shape of those tales is always the same. Voices on the CB suddenly cutting out, the flash of hazard lights on the shoulder seen from miles away, a driver found hours later with no memory of the last few minutes, or not found at all, their rig discovered idling gently at the side of the road, cab empty, door ajar. He doesn't believe those stories. Not really. But the brain is a strange machine. It can hold disbelief and primal terror in the same space. His foot eases off the throttle, just a little. The truck slows. The figure grows in his windshield. For a moment, for two, they are on a collision course. Not of impact, but of choice. The camera moves inside Eli's head for an instant, letting us feel the churn of his thoughts, the years he spent alone on nights like this, the people he's lost, the nights he's seen wrecks lit by flares and ambulance strobes, metal twisted and glass glittering like ice on the shoulder, the times he's seen roadside memorials appear where once there was just bare ground. He thinks of the figure, bound to this place, waiting. Waiting for what? Recognition? Confession? A ride that never came? Is there an obligation in being the one who sees something when everyone else is asleep? Does he owe this presence anything? As his truck draws level, the figure is suddenly there, at the very edge of his vision. Up close, it is both more and less than his imagination. There's no glowing face, no skeletal grin, no dripping theatrics, just an outline, a suggestion of a head, a hint of shoulders.
Within that outline, a darkness so complete his lights seemed to recoil from it. Where the face should be, there is only the impression of eyes, not as shapes, but as a feeling, like standing too close to a drop in the dark. For a fraction of a second, he has the bone-deep certainty that whatever it is aware of him, with a clarity no living stranger ever possessed. His foot slams back down on the accelerator, the truck surges, the moment breaks. He passes the figure, the beams slide away, and the shoulder returns to being just wet dirt and weeds. He drives for 10 miles before he realizes his knuckles have gone bloodless on the wheel. He laughs once, dry and shaky, the sound ripped away by the engine. "Yeah," he says aloud, to no one and nothing, "that's what I thought." He does not look in the mirror. The documentary voice does not tell us whether he did the right thing. It does not tell us whether there is a right thing in situations like this. It only shows us that he is not alone. That night, and the next, other drivers in other states see something very similar on their own empty stretches of highway. Some speed up, some slow down, a very few stop, hand hovering over the door latch, heart pounding so loud they can barely hear the rain. Most, in the end, choose to keep going. Over time, as the legend grows, patterns solidify into meaning. Some drivers say that when they saw the figure, it looked like someone they'd lost, a father, a friend, a child. The details never hold up under daylight interrogation. They admit they couldn't see a face, not really, but the feeling remains. Others say the figure always appears just after they've done something reckless, nodded off for a second, drifted over the line, checked their phone when they shouldn't. It begins to feel to them like a warning, a marker. The road itself, or whatever haunts it, reminding them that there are consequences waiting just off the shoulder. There is a moment, late in the film, when we join a newer driver, 23-year-old Cody, running his first long solo trip on a lonely highway in the desert. The night is huge around him, stars like ice chips scattered across a dome of black. His cab is cluttered with energy drink cans and fast food wrappers, the detritus of youth and inexperience. He has heard the stories. Every rookie does. He thinks they are just stories. He is tired, eyes gritty, music up too loud. When his truck drifts a little, the rumble strip growls under his right tires, and he jerks the wheel back. His heart thrums like a bird in a fist. He takes a breath, tells himself to focus. Up ahead, in the reach of his high beams, something stands at the edge of the road. This is his first time seeing it, so he doesn't have the ingrained denial older drivers have built up. He goes straight to fear. The figure emerges from the horizon line, resolves into human shape, waits without moving as his